Good morning, everyone. I'm Asha, and I'm very happy to be here. Most of you I've met already in the 2 weeks that we've been here. We've met already. Few of you are new faces. It's very nice to have you with us. We have a number of hours now that we get to spend together. I hear an echo in my voice. Is it echoing out there also? No? It's all right. If it's not a bother for you, it's fine for me. Okay. It's perfect. Perfect. I'll ignore it then. It's a nice, wonderful day to do a retreat on a rainy day because it increases the illusion that there's no world but this one. And I know all of you have a telephone that could connect you to the entire planet. I encourage you, unless it is a matter of great urgency, that you put them away and just try to be in this experience. A great deal can happen even in a short period of time when we concentrate our attention, especially when we concentrate our attention together. So we have some, I think, a plan that I'll explain to you a little bit later about how we're going to conduct the day. But I'd like to start by having just a couple of chants, a few minutes of meditation to bring all our energy to a focus here. And during this first short period of meditation, probably just 5 or 10 minutes at the most, do your very best to feel your breath, to follow the breath, to settle into the reality of the simplicity of our being, and offer a prayer, an affirmation, a holding up of our intention to our superconscious and to the divine. Help us together to really go deep into a more profound level of reality than our everyday life. That deep seeds can be planted within us of a transforming relationship to ourselves and to our lives. Okay? And if we work together in this spirit, we will have a few breaks, to keep us comfortable, including a lunch break. But I encourage you, if not to keep total silence, at least to be mindful of what our conversation is, what we're talking about, what we're thinking about, so that the energy together, we can be each other's friend in our spiritual aspiration. One of the great benefits of calling us together like this is to be with other like-minded souls. We are constantly being bombarded with the thoughts and vibrations of the world around us. And when we can create a vortex of like-minded aspiration, it can be a tremendous help in our spiritual journey. And even the bonds that we form with one another, even if we don't know each other on a personality level, those become part of these threads of light which are being woven all over the world at this time, and we are a part of that. So I'll ask my travel companion and friend Dambara to come forward, and he'll lead some chanting followed by a little bit of meditation.
Thou art my life, thou art my love, thou art the sweetness which I do seek. Thou art my life, thou art my love, thou art the sweetness which I do seek. In the thought by my love brought, in the thought by my love brought, I taste thy name. So sweet, so sweet. Devotee knows how sweet you are. Devotee knows how sweet you are. He knows whom you let know. He knows whom you let know. Thou art my life, thou art my love, thou art the sweetness which I do seek. Thou art my life, thou art my love, thou art the sweetness which I do seek. In the thought by my love brought, in the thought by my love brought, I taste thy name. so sweet, so sweet. Devotee knows how sweet you are. Devotee knows how sweet you are. He knows whom you let know. He knows whom you let know. Thou art my life, thou art my love. Thou art the sweetness which I do seek. Thou art my life, thou art my love. Thou art the sweetness which I do seek. In the thought by my love brought, in the thought by my love brought, I taste thy name, so sweet, so sweet. Devotee knows how sweet you are. Devotee knows how sweet you are. He knows whom you let know. He knows whom you let know. Thou art my life, thou art my love. Thou art the sweetness which I do seek. Thou art my life, thou art my love. Thou art the sweetness which I do seek. In the thought by my love brought, in the thought by my love brought, I taste thy name, so sweet, so sweet. Devotee knows how sweet you are. Devotee knows how sweet you are. He knows whom you let know. He knows whom you let know. Thou art my life, thou art my love. Thou art the sweetness which I do seek. Thou art my life, thou art my love. Thou art the sweetness which I do seek. Thou art my life, thou art my love. Thou art the sweetness which I do seek. Thou art my life, thou art my love. Thou art the sweetness which I do seek. How shall I love thee, Lord my God, with every breath I breathe? How shall I love thee, Lord my God, with every breath I breathe? Just as a fire may burn a whole forest, burn to the root my desires. Just as a fire may burn a whole forest, burn to the root my desires. How shall I seek thee, Lord my God, with every breath I breathe? How shall I seek thee, Lord my God, with every breath I breathe? Just as a fire may burn a whole forest, burn to the root my desires. Just as a fire may burn a whole forest, burn to the root my desires. How shall I serve thee, Lord my God, with every breath I breathe? How shall I serve thee, Lord my God, with every breath I breathe? Just as a fire may burn a whole forest, burn to the root my desires. Just as a fire may burn a whole forest, burn to the root my desires. How shall I worship thee, Lord my God, with every breath I breathe? How shall I worship thee, Lord my God, with every breath I breathe? Just as a fire may burn a whole forest, burn to the root my desires. Just Just as a fire may burn a whole forest, burn to the root my desires. How shall I love thee, Lord my God, with every breath I breathe? How shall I love thee, Lord my God, with every breath I breathe? Just as a fire may burn a whole forest, burn to the root my desires. Just as a fire may burn a whole forest, burn to the root my desires. How shall I seek thee, Lord my God, with every breath I breathe? How shall I seek thee, Lord my God, with every breath I breathe? Just as a fire may burn a whole forest, burn to the root my desires. Just as a fire may burn a whole forest, burn to the root my desires. How shall I serve thee, Lord my God, with every breath I breathe? How shall I serve thee, Lord my God, with every breath I breathe? Just as a fire may burn a whole forest, burn to the root my desires. Just as a fire may burn a whole forest, burn to the root my desires. How shall I worship thee, Lord my God, with every breath I breathe? How shall I worship thee, Lord my God, with every breath I breathe? Just as a fire may burn a whole forest, burn to the root my desires. Just as a fire may burn a whole forest, burn to the root my desires. Just as a fire may burn a whole forest, burn to the root my desires. Just as a fire may burn a whole forest, burn to the root my desires. How shall I love thee, Lord my God, with every breath I breathe? How shall I love thee, Lord my God, with every breath I breathe?
I'm just so happy to see so many of you here. It's a very special opportunity to set aside this much time to attune ourselves to something more than the ordinary. And contemplating how we could best use this time, an idea came that I hope you will enjoy as much as I will. One of the difficulties when we're talking about, one of the reasons that we often have difficulty moving forward in a spiritual way toward greater understanding is that it's a little obscure to us, both the method and even what it looks like to succeed. One of the enormous gifts that this line of masters, ending with Yogananda on the far end and then his disciple Swami Kriyananda, have brought to the conversation of spiritual growth in this particular age is the fact that Yogananda lived in the Western world but was from India. Kriyananda is an American disciple who grew up in Europe and also lived for a time in India. So we have this both East and West. We also, for those of us for whom English is our first language, we have both of them offering their teachings in English, which is always helpful if that's where we're starting from. And since that's become the language of the whole world, that's also part of the way that things are benefiting. Of course, translation is possible, and now you can just use your phone and point it at another language and it'll transcribe it for you, which is tremendously helpful too. All of these ways in which differences are being dissolved. So one of the remarkable things that I found about Swami Kriyananda's teachings is the way that he can take very abstract ideas and make them accessible just in our everyday life without lowering the top of the mountain, but just giving us a path that we can recognize and stand in. So when we start with a topic like we're working with today, how to be a light unto the world, almost everyone, and some more, no matter how we define that, have the desire to be that. But we don't know how. We don't know how to measure it. We're not even sure what light is. It's complicated. The ancient teachings of India, which are rightly called Sanatana Dharma, which is translated in two ways. It can either be called the eternal religion, or the other definition, which I'm much more fond of, is simply that which is, which takes the whole idea that religion is something separate from life, and just, even by the very words, just dissolves it. It's because there is no difference between spirituality and life. There really is no difference between ourselves and divinity. We have many different levels of experience, but what we experience is not necessarily the definition of what is. The Indian culture is relevant because it is the only continuous culture on the planet today. No one can measure how old it is. They have evidence going thousands of years back that it was essentially the same culture. People were meditating, people were doing yoga, people were having Om boards and doing the Om technique. I mean, really. And the understanding of that which is was always the same. The purpose of life is to expand our awareness, and there is no limit to the expansion of awareness. We continue to evolve until we become endless. That's how Yogananda put it. And if we think about our life experience, even from being little babies, it's always an expansion of awareness, isn't it? A child has to learn language, a child has to learn behavior, a child has to learn what's edible and what isn't edible, and then you get a little better than that, and you learn what's acceptable and advantageous. We learn to read, we learn to write. None of those things are invented. They're all just existing to be discovered, but either because of age and lack of experience or because of psychological quirks and karmic blocks. It's all there to be discovered, but we're not aware of it. And so what we gradually do is expand our awareness. I'm a devotee. By that I mean I have a wholehearted, open devotion to God and Guru, to God in the form of Divine Mother, to Heavenly Father, all the forms that we prayed to. So I speak the language of devotion quite comfortably, but you don't have to. You can just go to the word awareness. What is the limit of our ability to expand our awareness? Because every time we go an inch, we discover that there's another foot that can be gained, isn't it? By its definition, as soon as our awareness expands in one area, we see how much bigger it can be. Where is the ending point of that? The masters tell us there is no ending point. It becomes infinite. It becomes eternal, unchanging. Now, the role of the masters is in Sanatana Dharma is understood. In Christianity, we have Jesus in the middle of the altar. Jesus, gradually the theology, not the actual teachings of Jesus, but the theology of Jesus became that he was unique. Where he sprang from is a little unknown, but we don't worry about the details. He's just, there he is. They took his words, which were esoteric in meaning, and gradually brought them down to what the ordinary human mind can understand. But Sanatana Dharma teaches, and Jesus himself taught, that every individual spark of divinity, spark of life force, the Sanskrit word is jiva. I've been repeating that, those of you who've been hearing me. Every one of us is a jiva, which is a spark of the same divinity, but we are not aware of it. And we go through many, many, many incarnations and gradually increasing our awareness until we become fully realized. So each of the souls pictured on this altar are jivas just like us, but they finish the job. We're in the middle of the journey, they finish the journey, and from the divine home that belongs to all of us, they're guiding us through the pitfalls of this path. The path, meaning the path from delusion to enlightenment. So one of the fundamentals of abundance in whatever sphere you're talking about, whether you're talking about wealth or talent or skill or money, whatever it might be, or relationships and love, one of the laws of abundance is that we have to not hoard what is given to us, but we have to become an active channel of whatever abundance we have. Many people think of money as a fixed quantity, that there's only so much of it, so I need to gather as much as I can. When Swami wrote a book about prosperity, a small book, he called it money magnetism, how to attract what you need when you need it. And the whole flow of that small book is simply that. We developed the magnetism of abundance, which is about how to use energy, how to use creativity. It's not my subject today, but it's a very interesting one. But it was money magnetism, not money accumulation. And we begin to understand that. Even more so is that true of our consciousness in this sense, which is we are not the creators of our perception. We merely tune in to vibrations of consciousness that are already there, and we decide what we're going to be a channel for. This is why a person who has been a channel for very dark energy has intentionally or accidentally attuned themselves to nefarious ideas of selfishness and violence perhaps, or greed, whatever it might be. If they suddenly become aware that this is not making them happy, and then convert, and often there's a saint or a master involved if it's a dramatic conversion, from today being a dark entity, tomorrow they become a light entity. And same body, same face, same history, but their awareness has shifted and they have tuned into a different level of reality, and then suddenly they become a channel for that. And that's all that we are. We are what we choose to be an instrument of. The same collection of psychological forces can be unhappy, can be hurtful, or can be joyous and can be kind. The only thing that switches is the radio station we're listening to. You know, I am of an age, and I know some of you are also. I grew up with a radio that was bigger than me for much of my childhood. And it had this marvelous dial on it, had a big knob, and you could turn it on, and I got tall enough to be able to push the button and turn the knob, and I'd go in the living room and do both of those things, and then I would move the dial, and it would move across. And all of these different things were suddenly in the room. I mean, of course, now we can do that on our internet, and we can do the same thing. It's that we create an instrument that can receive and broadcast. But the it is just always there, isn't it? You know, as a child, there was somebody talking about sports, there was somebody singing a song, there was somebody arguing about politics. You know, I remember just enjoying turning it on and off, moving the dial, watching it. It was all very tactile for a child. But it was a perfect image. Today, I'm happy. In 15 minutes, I might suddenly tune into something that makes me sad. I could get bad news that could make me crushed. I could get good news that could make me elated. And all I am is what I'm channeling. Now, now that we think in terms of spiritual growth and being a light, meaning being something that is an uplifting force in this world, in the tradition of Sanatana Dharma, it speaks of the ways that the divine enters into the material world. And the philosophical summary of that is they call it the 8 manifestations of the divine. And in my life experience, and I've said this to some of you, there's a few things that I think are essential to having a solid understanding of how to progress on the road to enlightenment. And, there's traditional ways of saying it too. I speak of what is karma, what is reincarnation, what is the chakra system. It's also very helpful to understand the yugas, which is the ages of rising and falling consciousness on planet Earth, because it makes us more relaxed about the world outside of us. But the other, which I have not mentioned until now, is the 8 manifestations of the divine. Because we say, oh, I want to be a channel for the light, I want to be a channel for God, especially the word God, I want to be a channel for God, or I want to be a channel for the divine. But what exactly does that mean? And what does that look like when it's a matter of me? I grew up in the Jewish tradition, and I vividly remember the movie The 10 Commandments, which was really quite a blockbuster when I was a child. And there's some point in there where Moses is on Mount Sinai, and as the joke goes, Moses was the first person to download onto a tablet something from the cloud. But, they have him up there and they just trying to make it feel like it's God. There's thunder, there's lightning, there's just like this terrible tumult going on. And out of all of that, the light comes down and it strikes the tablets of the 10 Commandments. And then Moses staggers down the hill, and presents it to the Jewish people who have become debauched in his absence, which is really unfortunate. They're worshiping the golden calf, and he's been anyway, it's a mess. Like, what am I supposed to do with that, really? I can't even grow a beard. I'm not a man. What can I do? So what is it that we're really talking about? So again, I was commenting that one of the geniuses that I experienced in my 40-some years with Swami Kriyananda was he could take something very abstract and make it very concrete. That's not the right word. He could take something very abstract and he could prove the principle as above, so below. So that if it's true on the highest level, there's an actual accessible truth that we can also find in the world that we know. As an example, people always ask, why did God create this world? Because from our perspective, great parts of it seem like a really bad idea, right? And one of the classic explanations is so that he could enjoy himself through many. And the obvious protest is, well, he doesn't seem to be enjoying himself through very many, so it seems like a pretty bad idea. But Swamiji put it quite differently. Now, the Sanskrit synonym for God, the best synonym, is Satchitananda. It means ever existing, ever conscious, ever new joy. Isn't that beautiful? Ever existing, no fear that will be taken away from us. Ever conscious, which means that we are aware. We are aware of it. It's not that joy is out there somewhere, but we are aware of it. Ever existing, ever conscious, and then Yogananda refined it, ever new joy. Because otherwise we think joy itself might become tiresome, but ever new. So when we think of part of the limitation of speaking English is the word God has no meaning in English. And it has no experiential meaning. We can get a theology, but ever existing, ever conscious, ever new joy, we understand, at least dimly, what that might mean. So Swamiji then said, it's the nature of joy to want to share itself. Because joy is increased when it shares itself. Think of the most ordinary circumstance. Perhaps you will enjoy today. And then you will tell someone about the books you read, or the things that you learned, or the resources that you discovered. Or let's say you don't enjoy today, but maybe you went to a wonderful restaurant last night. You've probably told somebody about it already, haven't you? Because when you enjoy something, it's the nature of joy to want to share itself. So we take something that's so elevated and we bring it right down to where we're standing. Thus the 8 manifestations of God. And these are the classic qualities. You may advocate for a 9th or a 10th if you wish, but these 8 work. And the thing about it, and this is what the rest of the day is going to be, is we're going to go through these and we're going to try to understand them conceptually, then we're trying to experience them through music, and then we're going to deepen that with silence. And that's the pattern that we'll follow. And each one of them, this is how it works this way. The manifestations are love, joy, peace, calmness, which is different than peace, because you can be very calm in the midst of chaos, which is a very useful quality. Calmness is calm. Love, joy, peace, calmness, energy, which can also be defined as power, but energy is an easier way to understand it. Energy, wisdom, light, and sound. Now, what happens is, this is why these are so important. When we begin to understand the nature of each of these qualities, now bear in mind, this is, so to speak, the radio program that is constantly emanating from the infinite source. This is God's presence in this world. And it's not that, as soon as I become calm, I become God. It's more like this is the vibration of the Spirit. And when we tune in to that vibration coming in, that's what it means to be a channel for God. Because we don't have the wisdom or the freedom or the power. Jesus, who was fully realized, oh, this man is blind, I think I'll help him to see. Oh, this man is dead, I think I'll bring him back to life. He could do all kinds of things where he could just play with this planet. But he was channeling the same energies, and he was applying them as was appropriate. To raise the dead was a manifestation of divine power, wasn't it? To decide that it was appropriate to do was a manifestation of wisdom. Because, Yogananda himself had the power also to bring people back. Even though they had absented their bodies, he could draw them back into their bodies if it was appropriate. And in one case, when he was in India as a younger man, he was walking down the street and there was a house where someone had died, and he went in. He asked to be alone with the person who had just absented, and he pulled them back. Then the person said that they were sort of wandering in a field, I believe, of flowers, and they heard their name being called. And then all of a sudden they were back in the body. When Yogananda told that story to Kriyananda, Swamiji said, what called you to do it? Why did you do that? He said, Divine Mother told me to. If she hadn't told me, I never would have. Because it wasn't his job to always defy death, but wisdom inspired him to know that this was a time when that power should be used. So power, love, and wisdom. And a certain calmness when you walk into a house and say, excuse me, your dead person isn't really dead. But in India at that time, the fact that he was a Swami and had this extraordinary aura, many things could happen. Could happen here, too, of course. So when we understand the vibration of each of these, see what this also gives us is this gives us a very dynamic, always expansive way of increasing our awareness and always serving as a channel, instead of just using conventional habit and psychological subconsciousness to just do what we always do. We stop and we ask, and this is the wisdom aspect of it. We stop and we ask 2 questions. What would benefit this moment, and what am I capable of doing? You see, and both of those questions are extremely important, because sometimes we just get lost in abstractions. And we lose the wisdom of humility and try to do something that is not ours to do because it's beyond our level of awareness to do it. I mean, I could ask all the servants at the wedding feast to fill many jars with water, and I could pray over them, but when they opened them, likely they would still be water. because Jesus knew that he could turn the water into wine. It can be done in theory, but it can't be done by me. But I might be able to cheer people up about the fact that there was no more wine. Because I could be happy whether we're drinking wine or not. That might be, or I might help the host to be calm over the fact that there's no more wine and his guests are about to revolt. You see, in every situation, always, one of those 8 manifestations is available to us. Even if it's only the wisdom to know there's nothing I can do to help this. And so our idea of being a channel of the divine moves from an abstraction to an extremely accessible, practical way to live. And you see what that does for us also is that there's always a way forward. And that's what is one of the most fun aspects of embracing a spiritual path like this one, which is every moment can be used productively to expand my awareness and to increase the flow of abundance through me, to be serviceful, to have a meaningful life, and in the process to train myself always to be thinking in an upwardly moving way. Because what we have to understand, and I said this, I want to say it again forcefully, what I am talking about is not a creative use of imagination. These are actual living realities. These are the radio programs that are constantly being projected into the universe we live in. They're being literally projected by saints and masters in the astral world who are trying to take care of us. I have read many accounts, which I, for many reasons, believe are credible, in addition to what Yogananda and Kriyananda say. We are never alone. If we could but see it, we are constantly surrounded by angelic forces and saints and masters who are cheering us on. But they will not invade, they will not force us to accept their presence. They merely radiate, and we have to align ourselves with them. So it's a very interesting blend of our willpower and the grace of God. And what we have to do in order to build faith in these realities is to conduct the right experiment. And so that's what we're going to do today, okay? I think all that is pretty clear. So we'll start with the quality of love, which is always a good starting point, isn't it? There is a statement in the New Testament, which I actually, because I was raised in a Jewish family, I never read the New Testament. I didn't read the Old Testament either. We were just cultural Jews. We were cultural rather than religious. That's a very deep identity, whether you're we have all kinds of words like we're not practicing Jews, but we're still, that doesn't make you not Jewish. In any case, I started on this path when I was 18, just before my 19th birthday, a book by Swami Vivekananda, the foremost disciple of an avatar in the 1800s, Ramakrishna. And I was given his book, and in his book it said, "Perfect love casts out all fear." And for most of my life, I thought that was his statement. Later, when I studied the New Testament, I found out actually it's from the Bible, St. John in the Bible. Whether Vivekananda discovered it on his own or it's whether St. John got it from someone else, I don't know. Perfect love casts out all fear. I was very, very nervous at that stage of my life, and certain what they call formless anxiety, is sort of one of the things that I've had to work my way through. So anything that talked to me about fear, about the antidote to it, was of extreme interest to me. So the power of that simple idea has caused me to be very interested always in how that could work. And so, of course, we have remarkable examples of how people can tame wild animals, can calm an angry storm. But the power of love that we're talking about is, well, it's very closely tied to compassion. And this is what I was saying about how we sort of can find incorporated in all of this. When we fear someone, it's almost always because we think that they can do something to us that's harmful. And we separate ourselves immediately from them, don't we? They become other, we become barricaded against them. But we can also, see them in a very different light, feel this great compassion. Recently I was telling, and I'll tell it again, this story. There's two remarkable women who made themselves known through the Second World War. They were deeply devoted Christians in Holland and in the Netherlands. When Germany, the Nazi forces just took over the Netherlands and began to try to exterminate the Jews. And they felt great love and compassion for the Jewish people. And even though they were spinster sisters, elderly, in their 50s probably when this happened, and their father, and there was tremendous danger in what they were doing. I mean, you can imagine. They started a huge underground movement, and they rescued Jewish people who would have been incarcerated. They spirited them out of the country. And because they were just these two funny spinster women, it took a long time for anybody to realize what they were actually doing. And some of the Jewish people were too Semitic in the way that they looked. And so other people were afraid to take them in, or they were too hard to take out. So the most dangerous ones to shelter, they took into their own home. Now, let's talking about love, casting out fear. Now, of course, there was anxiety in what they were doing. They could not have been so foolish as to not to know what their jeopardy was. But their love was much greater than that. They just could not allow people to suffer. The compassion they felt really moved them. Now, sometimes the principle is proven in the exaggeration of it, or the extreme example of it. And in the end, they were betrayed. And in the end, they were incarcerated. The father died immediately. The older sister, Betsy, died before they were liberated, and only Corey, of the three of them, survived. At the end of Betsy's life in the concentration camp, Betsy started telling Corey that after the war was over, there were going to be so many damaged people in the world, because she could see it in vision. She could see the future. You're going to establish a safe house, and all of these damaged souls will come, and you'll have to take care of them, and you'll have to restore them, you'll have to pray for them, you'll have to talk about the love of Jesus, which she said. You have to tell people that no darkness is so dark or deep that the love of Jesus is not deeper still. And then looking at where they were, she said, and they will believe you because you've been here. And so Corey listened to all of that and was amazed, and she assumed that Betsy was telling her that they would have to take care of the Jewish people once they got liberated, because that's what they'd been doing all along. And she realized that Betsy was talking about the Nazis. And these people had, murdered their friends and their family, but all Betsy could see was compassion for how much they were going to suffer. And in fact, much to her credit, and it took great strength from Corey, she actually did that, and they helped as many of the ex-Nazis as they helped the Jews to just move beyond this. Now, in our little world, when we love someone, love is a powerful motivating force. And the most powerful motivating force we see it is the parents' love for the children. It's just, I've never given birth to children in this life, but I understand it and I see it in all of my friends. One of my friends told me before his children were born, he said he thought he was a selfless person And he was generous, he was kind. After his sons were born, he said he had no idea what true love really was. Because prior to that, he'd always been holding something of himself back. But once his sons were born, his own life ceased to matter for him. And how many stories do we have of parents just intervening in stunningly courageous ways, where they don't even think for a moment about the cost to themselves, because love casts out all fear. Let me just think. Oh yes, this was a moment. This was now, and I'm going to give you a very simple story. A friend of mine, she died of cancer in her 30s. She was probably the first person I knew who died. She died very young. She was a very feisty person. She was also quite small. Swami used to call her a bantam rooster. She was really a feisty person. And she had been very rebellious against her own family, especially against her father. Her own mother had died young of cancer too. And her father became, as parents would be, extremely protective. She did not like, his name was Jake, she did not like his interference in her life, and she ran away from him as soon as she could and made her own life with us. But then she's dying, and of course her father is beside himself. First he loses his wife, now he's losing his daughter. And she was within our Ananda community, and the very generous-hearted woman who was sheltering Mary brought Jake to live in her house too, because Jake needed to be there. So my friend Paula, who was an angel and trained me in angelic ways that I didn't understand how to do, she knew how to do. Susan, Paula, and I wanted to go visit Mary. So we call up the house. Jake answers the phone. Paula says, "We want to come see Mary." Jake says, "Mary's too tired, she doesn't want to see you." And Paula tries something, and Jake just says, "No," slams the phone down. Jake, it's not even Jake's house. He slams the phone down. So we have a little conference. We agree that Mary never wanted Jake to run her life when she had the energy to rebel. And it's very unlikely that she wants him to run her life now that she's dying. So we just decide we're just going to go anyway. So we go to the door, we ring the doorbell. I think whoever was the mistress of the house wasn't there. Jake answers the door again. He sees us. "I told you not to come," like this. I had the sense to stand at the back. Paula knows just from her heart everything that Jake is experiencing. Absolutely everything. And she says, all she says is, "Jake, we had to come." And Jake again rails at us, blah, 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 like this. Unfazed. "Jake, we had to come." Not a breath of censure, not a breath of judgment, just totally, she just loved the man because she knew he was suffering. That's all she projected. 3 times they did it. And finally Jake says, "Well, don't stay very long." And he just let us in. What would I have done? I would have tossed 1,000 words at Jake and tried to persuade him, which is just what he wanted. He probably would have punched me out before it was over. But because I wasn't capable of loving him in that circumstance. But she was. So always ask that question. Now here's another example. I used to have a habit of procrastination, and I was doing essentially the same work I'm doing now, but I was organizing tours. I was setting up things for months in advance, and I always had this, like, what if I don't want to do it, 3 months from now? And so I would always procrastinate committing myself. I've gradually overcome it, but it was very hard for me. If you're setting up a 6-week lecture tour, you've got to commit. You've got to make plans and make it work. So I would procrastinate and just not quite make it happen. And so a friend of mine watched me do this, and they knew this was not going to help me. So the only thought they had about why I would be so inept was that I didn't understand the terrible consequences of my procrastination. This was a misuse of the concept of wisdom. So they sat down with me and tried to talk to me about all the terrible things that would happen if I didn't just, for gosh sakes, just make a decision and stand by it. And the more they told me about the awful things that would happen, the more terrified I became, because my problem was fear, and wisdom was not strong enough to overcome it. And finally I was wise enough, because wisdom is one of the things that I like, to say, I know, but I'm afraid. I need somebody to comfort me, you know? Don't try to use wisdom. Just love me. Tell me that I can do it. You know, be a friend. And fortunately, my friend understood perfectly, and ever thereafter, always, whenever they saw me behaving like an idiot, they always knew that the problem was fear and the antidote was love. Just like that. And you know, even just in small ways, we don't have to be dramatic, we don't have to raise the dead, we don't have to be dealing with life and death. But when somebody is in front of you and you can tell they need something, love is often all that we need. And I learned from my own experience, I learned that almost always people know what they're doing wrong and know what they should do right. They're just afraid. And what is the antidote to fear? Love is the antidote to fear. You don't even have to like the person. I'm not talking about liking people. I'm talking about projecting the divine love to them. Now bear in mind, it's not me loving them. You know, Jake was a very unpleasant person. But Paula loved through his personality to the divine spark that was in him, that was itself also seeking the same thing that we were seeking, like this. So if it's accessible to you, you see, and everybody has different qualities. You know, full disclosure, someone asked me once, which had never been asked before, what are your favorites of the 8 manifestations? And I actually thought for a moment, and I said, joy and wisdom. That's what I like. But and then the person who asked me said, oh, my favorite is love. You know, so this also gives us a chance to be the unique force that Divine Mother wants us to be. When I was with Paula, I had the sense to know that joy and wisdom were not going to get us anywhere. It was intuitive because I hadn't thought it out yet. And Paula was all about love. And that's how she looked at anything in the world, and that's how she saw it. And she just loved it. And it worked for her. Okay, that's to be an instrument of God. So let's now have a little bit of music. We'll have a chant, then we'll have a song, one of Swami Kriyananda's songs, and then we'll have a meditation about as long as the one we just had, in which the vibration of the music will help us tune in on a more total level of the feeling of what we're trying to get, and then the silence will help us sink deeper into it. Okay?
Door of my heart, open wide I keep for thee. Door of my heart, open wide I keep for thee. Wilt thou come, just for once come to me? Wilt thou come, just for once come to me? Will my days fly away without seeing thee, my Lord? Will my days fly away without seeing thee, my Lord? Love is all I know, sun rays on the snow of a winter long, in darkness without song. Oh, my heart's a fire, burning all desire. Only you remain, and life again. Love is all I know, sun rays on the snow of a winter long, in darkness without song. Oh, my heart's a fire, burning all desire. Only you remain, and life again. Too long I did stray, flung lifetimes away, imagined you did not care. I know now your smile was mine all the while. I listened and love was there. I can't breathe for love, all the stars above call to me, come home. Life's waves all end in foam. Only love can heal all the pain I feel. What a fool was I to turn away. Love is all I know, sun rays on the snow of a winter long, in darkness without song. Oh, my heart's a fire, burning all desire. Only you